Matt, let's actually jump into the interactive portion where we're going to have you give Christina a technical Tableau interview. Like, and I'm kind of just, I want to just sit back and watch and kind of see you run her through this framework of that you put together over the past two data analytics teams that you developed.
Sure. And I guess just to preface, you want me to effectively be in character to some point, or do you want me to interject with immediate, like on the spot feedback, or how do you want me to do that?
Okay, so essentially the structure is, because for those of you listening, we've prepped this. So you're going to ask the general question of tell me about a project, and then you're going to be like, okay, in your resume you said that you researched and implemented data scaffolding. Can you explain this topic? Which is, I mean, it's not a simple topic. It's not like something. It's not like create a simple join. It's like you actually had to research that, Christina, and I mean, it took you a couple tries and attempts to like really get it nailed down.
All right, going into character.
So character, yeah. So okay, so my answer to your question is, let her kind of respond to your broad question of tell me about your project, your narrative. Then we can critique that. Then you can say, we can hop back into character and say, oh, I see in your resume data scaffolding. Can you tell me about this specific concept? Uh-oh, did you freeze again? Christina.
You guys are frozen for me.
Oh no, I wonder if we're having an internet connectivity issue.
Okay, you're back.
Okay.
It does say my internet connection is stable and I don't know what to do about it.
Network bandwidth. How about this? Just turn your camera off, and I think maybe that'll do better. I mean, the audience isn't going to get to see you communicate it, but they'll be able to hear.
That's okay. I usually use too many hand motions anyway, so.
More the better.
All right. I'm heading back to the background. Matt, I'll let you take it from here.
Hey, Christina, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very good. I am very much looking forward to hear all about your experiences with Tableau. I understand you've recently wrapped up, or you're in the process of doing some big project for a company. So I was hoping that you could maybe share with me a little bit about that process and maybe some of the key takeaways that you've had.
So we're still in the process of finishing the final project, and it is split into different parts. So we're just wrapping up the first part, which included looking at ad spent data for this company. It was a team of 2 other students who were also analyzing the data with me. So it was 3 of us in a class setting.
Okay.
And we were paired with the client of this company who recently released like a new product line. And with that came lots of ad spending to kind of promote the products of the new line. And so we were given the task of analyzing that ad spent data to see how different channels are performing, just to see like what was worth like spending money on ads for. We were given sources from 3 different channels, including Amazon, Google Ads, and Facebook. So we were given the data from these sources, and they were all 3 very different sources. So we had to find a way to kind of connect everything together and build out a dashboard.
Can you explain a little bit what, you've got 3 different data sources, Amazon, Facebook, and Google. What was the type of data that you were getting from each of these sources? Just curious.
So for example, for like Facebook and Amazon, we had like number of transactions. And then
what's a transaction?
So somebody like going through and like clicking on an ad and then it leading them to buy a product. And so like if they buy a product, that's a transaction.
Okay, so a purchase is a transaction, and that's what you were tracking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then also clicks, so how many clicks the ads were getting on each channel. And that was a metric that was for every single source we had. also impressions, so how many times somebody would see the ad or it would like go across their feed, even if it didn't mean that they clicked on it necessarily, as well as like the average, I think it was like the average time that was spent on like a certain page after they clicked on it. And so all those different metrics, and they were all different for every channel and labeled a different way. So we kind of had to sort through the different keywords that they used.
Give me a sense for just how big this data set, like how far back are we looking? Did they just launch and it's a couple months, or was it like a year? Was it a week? What are we talking about here?
So I believe they launched the product line, I think it was in 2019, and we had data from 2020. So we just had 2020 data. I think we had maybe a couple of data points from like late 2019, but it was mainly just the year of 2020 and how it performed there.
Okay, and the client pulled all this data for you, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have to request it, or did they just say this is what you will need?
I believe they just sent it to us, like saying this is what you'll need. We also were working with another person that was working like for marketing, I believe. So he also may have given input into what we would have needed, but I'm not entirely sure about that. I just know we received those data sources.
Okay, so how did the deliverable go?
So we presented, first we presented one prototype of like the dashboard, and we were still trying to figure out like exactly what the client needs were. So he gave us some good feedback on things that were like he really liked about the dashboard, and then other things that he either didn't like, or he was like, okay, this isn't really useful, like you don't necessarily need to put this in here, maybe replace it with this. Or just like, I don't like how this looks. Can you
give me maybe an example of what he liked and what he didn't like?
So one example was the ad spending, for like, he liked how we had broken it down like for every month. And he also wanted to see how it compared across different channels on different sheets. So instead of having it all on a single graph for like Amazon, Google, and Facebook, he wanted to see them all on separate graphs. So that was like one of the small things that he wanted changed, as well as he wanted to see like the number of transactions as a KPI card, instead of like something else we had on there, which might have been clicks.
Okay. How do you feel it went?
I think it went really well. I definitely learned a lot through the process. I had never really dealt with a client like that before, so I wasn't really sure what to expect at the beginning. But I think it went really well. He seemed to be really pleased with what we delivered to him.
Did you expect them to be like harder to work with, or what was it that surprised you?
Yeah, so I thought they were gonna have more like, I guess, tech, like they wanted more of like a technical drill down where we would have to like figure out certain like calculations with the data, but it really was just more of like I want to visualize this in this certain way so that I can pull some good information out of it.
So you thought maybe they'd be wanting like significant drill down capability where you can get really far into the weeds, really interactive, but that's not necessarily what they were looking for?
Right, exactly.
Okay. Well, good. If there was like one punchline, one sentence that you would use to like kind of wrap up that experience to really let me take away, what would it be?
It was, I would say it was a great experiential learning experience where, I really felt like getting my hands on this real data, I was able to apply what I had been learning in the classroom and see how, one day I will be able to do this for a job, hopefully in the future.
Cool. Okay. I'm good with that section. I don't know if we want to immediately give some feedback or what, but first off, Christina, great job. This is a safe space. So any feedback you get, you need to just be like open and willing and excited to use this so that you can just continue
Oh,
to
they have
iterate
some
and
thick
have a better
skin.
product, right?
They're not. They're used to being criticized. In fact, they probably criticize me the most. I'm the one who gets all of the criticism.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
So,
I'm perfectly fine with criticism. It's
Good.
the more the merrier.
All right. So I guess with that in mind, the little punchline that you wrapped up with is almost like what I would consider your leader. If you were to be asked this question again, is like, man, we had this opportunity to get real data from a real company and help them solve a real problem. And the experience of digging into actual data from these different systems and marrying it up and visualizing it so that they could help make a decision was super awesome. And let me tell you about what we did and how we did it. And then you kind of drill down into, the process. You don't need to get too far into the weeds unless they start poking. So I poked a couple times, but I didn't want to go too far. I think it's more like framing, what is the problem you're trying to solve? So tell me a story about this problem that you were invited to help solve. So yeah, so this big company has this new product that they just launched, and we were asked to help them figure out their ad spend. So I was super pumped. I got to go in and get some experience. We talked to them. We learned that most of their information is coming from Facebook and Google and Amazon. They're running their ads. All their campaigns are going through Facebook. They've got some ad spend from AdSense and YouTube. I don't know if that's true, but like just talk very high level about the data sources, and then they kicked it over to you. And then once you got it and you understood what they wanted from it, like how you worked as a team, like there's so many different little side message and stories that you could tell through this process about not only do you have hands-on experience, you've got like that technical stuff, you worked as a team, you communicated with the executives, you coordinated this process, you delivered, you presented. Like there's so many great nuggets in there, and it just kind of gets lost when you're like focused on we did this and then we did this and then we did this, right?
Okay.
So take a step back. I know you're in the weeds, and this is one of the hardest things, even, going from weeds to presentation. But when you're interviewing, start here. And then if you got to go down, you can, but like really work on the summary, work on the punchline, and make sure that you get that delivered. And then they're going to have a more visual experience, like thinking about, the running of the reports and all that kind of fun stuff. So
Okay.
that's my gut reaction. I don't know what other feedback y'all have.
So let me put on my professor hat here.
Uh-oh.
So, Christina, you did all right. Could be better. No, you did a great job. I'm just teasing you. Although I think there are key things that are missing from this. So, number one, you missed out on, you met with the marketing agency that they're marketing with to get kind of the project scoped out. So Ryan Forrest is actually one of my best friends, kind of entrepreneur buddies. He runs his own marketing agency. Back, I don't know, man, that was like 4 years ago. I connected my client with him, and now he runs the marketing for them. So you could say something along the lines of, I interfaced with the president and the marketing agency of, this large organization. I helped get clarity around which of the marketing channels had the highest return on investment. So we looked at Facebook advertisements. We looked at, oh man, I'm blanking on the other two. What were they? Facebook
And Amazon and Google.
And Google. And we found that the biggest return on investment from an ad spend perspective was that they need to double down on their Amazon ads. So, I mean, I think that kind of gives a high level.
Okay.
Matt, though, I mean, I'm kind of curious, is that important? Because I think that showing that you are talking to multiple, I guess, departments of an organization or functions of an organization, distilling down the most important information and giving actionable recommendations to the decision maker in an organization is pretty valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, all of that. I mean, communication. So um, the idea that it's difficult to convey soft skills in an interview is, it's not silly. It's a very common question, but the whole thing of the question is like, if you're interacting with someone, you're exhibiting your soft skills. If you're telling about these experiences, then you're exhibiting soft skills. So the fact that you had an objective, you, by most accounts, sounds like you achieved that objective. You've got your punchline. And in order to achieve that objective, you had to work with multiple parties, coordinate requesting of data, sizing up the issue, making sure that you understood the data, normalizing, all that fun stuff. So yes, that is absolutely beneficial to highlight. And I think, John David, you just mentioned something that even I overlooked, but what was the ultimate thing? So the ultimate thing was, we helped them identify what their most profitable channel was so that they could decide where they want to continue turning that dial up, right? So getting to that punchline, whetting their appetite, like, ooh, value. This person has done work that has driven actionable insights that create value. That's good, right? Value, good. Plant that seed and then reinforce the heck out of it. So that's good feedback. I think that's important.
Well, what I think is so cool about this is that you went to the president of this organization to scope out a project. Then you went to the marketing department to get insight on how to really do the analysis. So you're talking to the subject matter expert about their area of domain and what are the most important data points and how can we conduct this analysis? Because yeah, initially they did have all of the marketing data combined into one chart. And then Ryan said, hey, let's actually break these apart and then let's calculate the return on investment for ad spend for each of these individual channels. That will really, I mean, from his perspective, it's more money for fungi. So if he can prove that, one of these channels is, every dollar they put in, the client gets $2 back, then he can all of a sudden justify a $50,000 marketing proposal or something like that. So it's interesting kind of getting the different perspectives and takes across the organization, because I mean, the client is overseeing everything. So you created a lot of value by communicating what he thought he wanted, double checking it with the person who is basically owning that process and the data with that process, and then coming back to him with like a slight modification. So it's like you're getting iterations not only from the president, but also from the marketing agency that's running their ads as well.
Yep. Yeah. And a video I did recently called Analytics is a Team Sport. I mean, it's all about exactly what you're talking about, where you shouldn't be or be expected to be a subject matter expert in every single thing, right? You, even as an analyst internal, you are a consultant internally for the business. So you should be comfortable knowing where your limits of expertise lie. So if you're getting one request from over here that involves this group over here, don't just go start pulling data. Make sure you've got the whole story. So go talk to marketing, go back and talk to this person, CEO or whoever it was, and make sure like, okay, we're corroborating stories. We're all on the same page. It's go time. And that's just going to save a lot of churn. It's going to build rapport, build trust, so that when you present your findings, marketing doesn't go like, where'd you get that? Like, where'd that come from? Doesn't matter if it's accurate. They weren't involved. So it's immediately suspect, right? So there's so much value to be had with that communication. And so not only demonstrating that you've had it, but just getting that extra buy-in just bolsters up everything that you've done. So good.
Awesome.
Thanks for the feedback.
Well, we still got one more question.
Oh, okay.
So Matt, if you want to drill down on, so I think this will be valuable just so the audience can see what it's like, what you're looking for when you ask about specific technical aspects of a tool or an analytics process.
Yeah. Okay. So I might actually press a little harder this time, if that's what you want.
Yeah.
So,
I was about to say, Christina, are you feeling bold and brave today? Really strong
Yes.
character. Okay. All right.
Good. All right, Christina. So I was taking a look at your resume, and thank you for explaining that project and working in Tableau. One of the things that it actually highlighted that you said that you were using as a technique was data scaffolding. So I don't hear that term very often, but I'm familiar with it. Tell me a little bit about how you leverage that in this particular process.
So for the different data sources that we had to look at the ad spending data for an entire year, for the 2020 year. And the data that we got didn't have like a date for every single day of the year. So when we tried to pull that into a visualization, it would
So
just
they didn't spend money every day of the year is what you're saying.
right. So it would be like certain transactions, like 1 week of the month and then 2 weeks later. So when we pulled that in, it wouldn't really show that it was like no spending on the certain week. It was just kind of like a continuous line. It looked strange right away when I tried to pull it into the data source.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out a way to, make it so that the visualization showed, okay, this is exactly when you spend the money for the ads, and this is how it compared to the sales or profit you got from it. So the way that I was able to kind of convey that was through data scaffolding. So since you have to create kind of like a temporary artificial structure so that you can pull in your data and arrange it the way you want for a visualization, what I had to do was create a sheet in Excel with just a date for every single day of the 2020 year, and then pull that into the data source, and then join that to every single table that had a date for spending. And then through that, it was able to show like those gaps that didn't show up in the ad spending data. They now were paired with like an actual date instead of just being kind of like connected for no reason.
So you're showing a chart with daily data, and it's for a full year?
So it's for a full year, and then you could break it down like for each month. So for example,
Okay,
during
so
the months
you're
of
grouping.
right. And so like, for example, for the months of the during the pandemic, they saw sales kind of like shoot up because it's like a hardware company. So, a lot of people were doing like home improvement type of stuff, or trying to make their home nice since they were stuck at home, I guess. So really looking at how like, okay, this month of the pandemic, there were like a bunch of sales, and then the month right before, like, how did it compare? Like how do we expect that to compare to next year, perhaps? Like,
Did you do like projections as well? Is that what you're saying?
we didn't do projections, but we did discuss with the client, like, oh, like we noticed that these were the months of the pandemic and you have like really high sales. And then he kind of explained like, okay, yeah, like we did notice that. And we did think that has something to do with the pandemic. But also like during the summer, he said a lot of times they have more sales. So
Okay.
it was interesting.
So the data scaffolding, basically the punchline on that was you had ad spend not every single day, but you're trying to plot a daily situation on ad spend, and that presented itself with issues because there's gaps in the charts. So you had to bolster or scaffold that up by filling in the blanks, and you did that by importing and joining a sheet from Excel with all the dates for the year. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Was that a new technique that you had not used before?
Yeah, I had never used it before. I hadn't heard about it. And then I heard about the term and how it could possibly help me in what I was trying to do. And from there, I was just kind of able to Google it. And, from the community forums, there were several examples of how other people have used it for their data. And I was able to look at that and kind of, just do a little bit of research and then implement it to our own data set.
And did it work in the first try? Did you have to, take a couple stabs at it? What sort of issues did you run into?
So what I first did was I downloaded somebody else's example of a data scaffold and
Okay.
played around with theirs because I didn't really want to, I don't know, possibly mess up what I had already done. So I played around with somebody else's data scaffold, like exampled. And then after playing around with that for a while, I was able to do it basically on the first try on my own data source.
Got it. Okay, that's cool. That's good that you were able to test drive. Now, I'm curious, within Tableau, like how would you characterize your ability to practice good version control? Or does it save history? Do you have multiple copies? How does that work? Because if you're playing around with somebody else's stuff because you don't want to mess up your own, how do you deal with that?
So you can create like another copy of your workbook and then just like, you can also just undo what you've done with like the undo arrow. But sometimes like I would get like error messages and I would try to like undo something and then it would just like mess up the whole thing. So I did have like several copies like where I would finally get something right and I would save it and then I would make it a copy of it and then start again like where I had left off and kind of did that.
Okay. Is that something that you practice regularly or just that you started doing with this project and you saw that it could save you?
Yeah, I've been doing it since we started using Tableau in the classroom, because a lot of times, especially when I was just starting out with Tableau, I didn't know what I had done wrong, and I didn't want to have to start over. So I did get into the habit of saving it and then just going back to it and working on it more.
Good. That's a good habit to have. All right. Good. So feedback on that one is, I think you said you used a lot of words to not say very much. And so I think that's just because, you're excited. This is fun, right? So I think that there's probably an opportunity definitely to tighten that up a little bit. And it all gets back to, what was the punchline? What is it? Why was it beneficial? Why was it necessary in this situation? So look, they don't spend money every day, but if you're going to plot this on a chart, that's going to leave gaps, right? So we needed to fill those gaps so that the visualization didn't look all wonky, and you accomplished that through data scaffolding. So this was a new technique. You did some research on Google, you got to practice on a template that had already exhibited, and then you applied it to your situation and it worked out. So lesson learned, you see the value, you understand the process, and then it leaves less rope for me to go try to tangle you up in it, right? I probably could have poked a lot more than I did, but I was just kind of letting you talk. So I was letting you create your own rope, and you didn't tie yourself up, which is a good thing, but it's more like, I think it could have been a minute little boom. And then I've got confidence, you feel good, and we move on to the next question, right?
Right. Yeah, I tend to do that. I tend to like.
Everyone does. They either say not enough or too much. There's little in between. So
Matt, what do you think about kind of giving more context to the project? Because I guess like it depends on how we want to kind of conceptualize this like mock interview of, she already in the first part said that she was working with 3 different marketing sources, but maybe reiterate that of saying, look, we had to study 3 different marketing sources of data, and when I tried to combine them together, the charts were broken because there wasn't a date for each individual date within the 2020 calendar year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say, so for my view, the way that we're doing this, it's kind of like assumed that I know everything that we've already talked about. That doesn't mean that it's not beneficial. Look, it's sort of like in a normal conversation, would you reiterate or reinforce that thing? Yes or no? If yes, then do it. If not, you feel like it's already there or it doesn't need to be restated. I would say lean towards the side of reinforcement as opposed to a wait. Don't assume that they're caught up, because then that's going to trigger questions, right? If she had started saying something that I didn't think I wasn't on the same page, I would think that most people might behave in this way. I know I do, but I would have probably cut her off and go like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, I don't get it. Like, I'm lost, because I want to be on that same conversational journey with you. And if I'm already off base, then I'm still trying to catch up. So that's not helpful for anyone. So yeah, additional context is helpful. I feel like in that situation, it wasn't as helpful. It might have been good to reinforce sort of what led to the issue. So.
Also, you got any more feedback?
For me?
Yeah.
Yeah. More feedback. So I know it's a Zoom conversation, and we're on webcams and all that. So there's a different dynamic just in general. I would say that in person, having these stories really outlined is going to give you confidence in communication, right? So I know I'm not in front of you, so you're not like looking at me. Obviously, you're looking all over the place, and I can tell that the wheels are turning, but they're turning a lot harder than I think they should. And that just comes down to really locking down your story. And the way that I've tried to deal with this in my own past, and what I try to recommend people do, is most interviews have a few key things that they try to get. And you can, Google this to your heart's content, like what they're all trying to solve for. But come up with like 3 to 5 stories that hit on those points so that you've just got those down. You can grab this story. So like you've got your Tableau consulting story down. From this Tableau consulting story, you learned about data scaffolding, you learned about visualization, you learned about communication. So you've got a bunch of stories off the shelf in one. So if you can really lock down that big story and all the different lessons learned, then you can draw on that at the drop of a hat. It'll feel natural. You'll be excited to talk about it, and you're not looking all over the place. You're just focused and like conveying your excitement in the story. And that just comes across with so much more confidence, believability. And I would just feel, as an interviewer, I would have less questions, because I can tell that you know what you're talking about and you lived that, you learned from it. And it's not just you regurgitating things and like reaching for application. You've already thought through, what you learned. And this is why it's important. So I think that would be maybe the last little tidbit there.
So my feedback is, I'm wondering if you, Christina, said extra words to show that you really understood. Like you got into the weeds, and got really specific, just to communicate that you really fully, deeply understood what exactly was going on. It seems like maybe the better way to handle that is to start the 5,000-foot view and just kind of lay out that very simple narrative structure. So here's the project, here's the problem, here's the solution. What do you think, Matt?
I think so. Yeah, it's kind of like I said when I said there was a lot of words. It's like there's this and there's that, and a lot of people, it's really hard to know where that safety zone is. So I always advocate for starting up here and then working your way down as necessary. You don't want to stay up here either, though, because I've had interviews, or I've interviewed people where they're just like, yeah, I did that. And then they stare at you. It's like, tell me, like, I don't want to have to pull the rope, but I also don't want to have it all over the table and you're just like tangled up in it, right? So there's just use your judgment as far as how the conversation is going. Do you feel like you can button it up here, or do you feel like you got to go here, and then only ever go down below 5,000 feet if the pressure's there, if the questions continue? But if they're nodding and they're following, and you feel like you've got a good beginning, lesson, end, then just let them move on or ask their questions. So just, I don't know, make sure you feel like you've got your bases covered, and not more than necessary unless asked. It's a super vague answer, but that's kind of the way it works.
I do like that framework, and it's actually kind of a similar framework that I use when I'm pitching clients. And they'll say, "Hey, have you ever done this?" Or, "Have you done any competitive intelligence work?" And then I'll just tell them the high level story. And then if they, ask me to drill down on a specific, or they ask me to elaborate, then it kind of goes. But yeah, it is a little bit of a trade-off, because if it's so high level, then it's like you don't really say anything. And then if it's too specific, their eyes just glaze over and they're bored.
Everyone overthinks it. Everyone overthinks it. So I think the extent to which you really lock down your stories and you feel good about them and you run them by other people, then, practice. I don't think we do enough practice. I think probably in your classroom, like mock interview, things like this are perfect because it gives you all that feedback. But a lot of people just go in completely like, I know my story. And then they're picking up their resume and reading it to the interviewer. It's like, man, just like say it to yourself in a mirror. Gosh dang, like just hear it, like say it. And then you'll learn from that. Even write it down, whatever it is you got to do. And you'll start to figure out what works, what doesn't.
Perfect. All right. It is 2:58. We have 2 minutes left in class. Christina, do you have any questions, or do you want me to let you go 2 minutes early?
I just had a question and I just left my brain. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I know you talked about briefly about kind of like doing like nonprofit or volunteer work. And like, for example, I had somebody kind of reach out to me asking if I wanted to apply to like this job that they do for like a nonprofit for data visualization after they had seen some of the stuff I had done. And
wait, let's pause there. That's a huge deal. Wait, how did they see your work? From the podcast?
I think it was like the podcast or the how to get an analytics. I can't.
How to get an analytics job.
How to get an analytics job. LinkedIn page, and he's actually a Greensboro College alumni who's like working for Greensboro College. He's just like doing like one adjunct class with music, but his full-time job is like something completely different.
Well, and, like, congratulations. That's huge.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but like currently, like I can't apply for a job right now, but like I go about asking like, okay, I can't really apply for this job. I can't really do that right now, but I would love to, do some visualizations for you, like as voluntarily, like just to get my hands on data and to just get more experience, I suppose.
So your question is, how should you approach that, knowing that you can't take like a full-time job or whatever it is that they're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you said it's a nonprofit.
Yes.
So yeah, typically nonprofits, they thrive on volunteers and people donating and things like that. So there's probably an opportunity there where you just be honest. I mean, kind of what you just said. It sounds like you've already got a sense for what you want to do and you're looking for affirmation that would be appropriate. And I would say, yes, it is appropriate to sort of say, look, this sounds awesome. I can't actually do that right now, but what I can do, if you're open to it, is offer myself as a volunteer. I'm looking for more experience. These are things I'm good at. And without knowing what the nonprofit is or what they do, I mean, if you have an understanding of what they do, what they're about, maybe you can try to get some ideas for what might be important to them. Like, how's their donor data look? And like, do they have issues with their contact information needing to be cleaned or visualized? Do they understand where their donations are coming from? Do they understand their sources and uses of funds? There's all sorts of rabbit holes that you could go down, but maybe pick one and say like, this is something I'd be interested in exploring if that's a need that you have. Otherwise, I'm open to other volunteer, and give them a sense for like how much time you're willing to commit as well, so that it's not like taken the wrong way as like, oh, sweet, we're going to get her full time, but we don't have to pay her. That's probably not good. You don't want to lead them on as well, but just give them a sense like, look, I'm looking to pick up some extra project work. I'd be willing to do a couple hours a week, whatever it is, something like that.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, I guess I kind of was just looking for like an affirmation of, is that like something normal for me to do? Or would they think I'm like, I don't know, strange?
No, I think it's great. I think it's great because you're building a connection. And I mean, presumably you're not going to be in the situation where you're in right now where you can't take that forever. right?
Mhm.
So there would be a time, and even if it's not with them, you're winning brownie points, you're getting experience, you're building rapport, goes on your resume, goes on your LinkedIn. Those people have connections. I mean, it just opens doors. It opens doors. So go for it.
Awesome. Anything else, Christina?
Thank you so much for your feedback. I
No
keep
problem.
freezing.
Thanks for putting yourself out there.
Yeah, Christina, thank you for
Of
being a good
course.
sport. Class
Yeah, no.
dismissed. You can go about your day now.